What is up, everybody? Welcome back to Soccer Wise. David Gotts and Jordan Angeli streaming off the jankiest computer in all of soccer podcasting that is out there. I have come through the fire of spilling a full cup of coffee on my laptop as I headed up to Burlington, Vermont this weekend. I am now on to a refixed old laptop. So for anyone watching live on YouTube or watching later on, if it looks like we are 8-bit characters moving in slow motion, I apologize. I believe for anyone listening to the podcast, it should come out sounding okay, if not better than it has the last few days when I was on a bunch of random speakers. But Jordan, thank you for bearing with me.
Oh, of course. And I think you unlocked a new fear of mine in traveling on an airplane, is spilling contents of whatever cup I have next to me all over my computer.
Do you order the coffee ever?
It depends on the time of day.
Yeah.
Sometimes I take like this, I have this like nootropic coffee that I drink in the morning that's like supposed to help with not spiking your cortisol, which
I'm interested in this.
Yeah, if I drink that in the morning, then I'm not ordering the coffee on the plane because I don't want to be really super wired. Yeah. But there are times where I don't have it and I need a cup of coffee or two, or it just depends on how much work I need to get done.
The nootropic coffee, do you bring it with you and do it on the road, or is it like you need a whole coffee machine?
No, it's like a little, you can do like a scoop of it from a tub, or you get a little packet, and yeah, I think it's helped me. And it still gives you like that ritual of coffee drinking in the morning, which if you're a coffee drinker, you know, it's kind of all about the ritual. And without that big caffeine like spike. And
the caffeine spike for me is like a lifelong battle of like, I don't drink coffees. I need coffee. I need to eat before I drink coffee. Like this whole process. I tried for a little while one of those like, I don't think it was the one made of mushrooms, but one of the other ones that's like always pushed to you on Instagram. You have a frother. It's like a bit of a powder. It wasn't doing it for me, like on any level, so I didn't push there. We have an account on the YouTube called Karsh, who said I need that coffee. So if you want to avoid the crash, it sounds like Jordan Angeli is. You are consistently pitching products on this show. You are a born natural salesperson.
I didn't even realize that I do that, but I think I do.
Listen,
if you like what you like. I just speak what works for me in my life.
I would assume you've got a pretty dialed in plane routine.
It's pretty dialed in. Yeah. Even my arrive at the airport is dialed in, which, you know, can be great, but can also cut it to the wire. Like this last weekend, I didn't realize my game in DC. I was told it started at 12:30 Eastern time. No. That's when coverage began. We didn't start the game until 12:50, and I had a 4:17 flight out of Reagan.
Tight window.
Well, it's tight without the delay in the game, the kickoff.
But
and
DCA?
I was
which is like right there.
Sweating bullets. Yeah. It is right there. But have you ever been to Audi Field and trying to get out of that place?
Yeah.
It's terrible because it's in the middle of
it's surrounded by water on three sides for one reason.
Surrounded by water, but also there's like neighborhoods around it. So the streets are really narrow and they make you go out and then cross this bridge and then come back across this bridge. And it's actually terrible. And I felt bad for the runner that ended up taking me to the airport because I was just like stressing. And I told her name was Gabby. She was amazing. Kudos to Gabby. I don't have her information. I would have emailed her a thank you. I should have gotten her phone number or something, but I made my flight, Gabby, so hopefully you hear this. I was just stressed and like, okay, well, my flight's boarding now, and now we're group 1 to 2, and I got to the airport, Goss, and the security line, of course, like the one time TSA is like super long. I just looked at the person in front of me. It was like in a snake line, and I go, my flight is going to close in 10 minutes. Can I go in front of you? And just like puppy dog eyes this lady, and she was like, yeah, go. And then the clear lady was like, just go here. And I just cut through the whole line and got on my flight, and I was fine. But it was stressful.
Whew. I am someone who also cuts it close. I oscillate. Sometimes I'm like, I then stress myself out that I like overcorrect and show up way early. Mm-hmm. I can't remember the last time I walked up to the security line and like they were in deep into boarding, like past
Me neither.
that message of like boarding will begin soon. Please wait for your group. And normally I'm at the airport before that.
Yeah.
I'm a big public transportation person, so I have to schedule that in. And sometimes when that goes wrong, then you're like, start to do the calculations of like, can I get on a bird scooter with my suitcase like under my arm and get there? Or do I have to like order an Uber here, take it 7 blocks and run from there? So thank you for adding that stress to my life.
Yeah, you're welcome. I feel like we helped each other on both sides.
Yeah, we both helped each other out on that one. I took a 6:45 a.m. flight back after not sleeping on Sunday. So I was on time for that one.
Yeah.
I walked in and was like, there was a security line, and I was like, oh no. And I was like, oh wait, I'm like an hour and a half early for this.
You had to keep yourself up. So you were like, to the airport early.
Zippy Tuna says the lack of scooters or bike options at San Diego Airport is a catastrophe. Airports inside of super commercial or super populated areas are amazing because you're like, oh, I'm just at the airport. And airports that are far out of cities, you have to like do this whole other experience of like you're talking about like, okay, if I need to be at training in this market at 1 p.m., I need to land at 11 and get off and get out and go there and do all of that. And it is such a pain, but we are lucky to get to fly to a lot of soccer games.
We
and
are,
do all of these things. And sometimes there are casualties along the way, like my laptop, but I am fine with that. I am assuming you were glad you stayed for the whole game once you got through that at Rowdi Field. Epic return for NWSL this weekend. Some wild results, some wild games, the biggest one being the match you were on, the return of Trinity Rodman, the emotional post-game interview as she has worked her way back from injuries, and of course with the whole layoff, finally getting a chance to be back out there on the field. I know one of our producers here at SoccerWise, Douglas Reyes-Cerrone, was in the crowd as well, sent a video of the other side of the interaction and reaction while you were up in the booth calling the game, but not a bad one to stay for overall, and I feel like you had a pretty good weekend to restart NWSL.
It was a great weekend. Whenever I can be on site, Goss, I am saying sign me up because I think I was calculating, and this, I might be off by one game, but I think I've been in NWSL since 2017 calling games. I think I've called 7 games on site.
It's wild. It is
out
wild.
Of probably, 250 games. So I was really happy. And the coolest part about it, of course, the game probably was the coolest part. But for me, just on, when you're traveling all the time, you don't, and with soccer, like I have friends all over the place. And 3 of my teammates from my under 20 team that I played with in 2006 live in DC, and I got to see them all and their families. And so Amanda Poach, Nikki Krizik, now Nikki Phillips, and Tina DiMartino. And for the people that are like way into the women's soccer universe, you'll remember Nikki Krizik won championships with FCKC back in the day in NWSL. And Tina DiMartino was one of the most crafty players to ever play, played in WPS, didn't end up playing in NWSL, but my goodness, she was so good and so touted with the national team and such a fun player to be able to watch. So it was so cool to, like, for me, selfishly being there and getting to see my friends, like reinvigorized me and made me feel so happy. I was so happy. So we both got to see a lot of friends this weekend.
Yes, I was in Vermont for the USL 2 final, and it was arguably the greatest sporting experience I've ever had. I have waxed poetic about it 3 times already this week, so I will not put everyone through a 4th. But I totally know what you mean, the like personal connection that we have because this is our space.
Yes.
For all of us, right? For fans, you make a lot of friends through games, and like there's times where it's like, yeah, I'm going to go to this away game and connect with this person who I've met. And then there's other times you're like, this is my friend. And you're really excited to go and see them and hang out with them. And when you get to combine all those things, it's like kind of the best.
It is.
Sort of like when we are all going to be at Denver Summit FC's first ever game, which we are so excited about. We are still less than a year away. We are approaching things, and it is going to take us into our news to start this show. We will talk all about the weekend that was. We'll help preview the weekend that's coming up in NWSL. It is Rivalry Week. Are we like officially calling it that? It's an official name?
Sounds like NWSL is. So
Great. Do we have a sponsor, though? Because if there's no one paying the bills on it, I don't know how official it can be.
Well, we are not sponsored, but we will take sponsorships for Rivalry Week.
Especially from any alternative coffee brands or alternative soda brands. Yeah. Or specifically only that one.
Yeah, you have to. That one, actually. The other one makes my tummy hurt, so don't do that.
Okay. Good to know. I'll put that on the deck. Makes tummies hurt, so we want this one instead. So we'll talk all about that coming up, but we're going to start with the news. Ally Sentnor, of course, the huge news inside the league coming out right before the weekend started. Her trade to Kansas City, one of the best young players in the world, getting moved inside the league is always going to be discussed, but we are going to start with the breaking news as of a few minutes ago. So look at us being timely and on time. Denver Summit FC has officially announced their first ever head coach, and it will be Nick Cushing. Nick Cushing will make his debut in NWSL with Summit FC. His resume for 7 years was head coach or coached in the CFG family over in England, mainly with Manchester City's women's program. Won the WSL in 2016, the league title, as well as being named manager of the year with that team. Has coached an insane resume of players through that program, namely Kira Walsh, Jill Scott, Lucy Bronze, Bunny Shaw. But we'll get into some of those names again in a moment. After that, came over to the United States, worked with NYCFC in Major League Soccer, was an assistant coach, took over after Patrick Vieira and Ronnie Dyla left, became the head coach for 2 years, was let go back in 2024, and then spent most recently a couple months as the interim manager of Manchester City's women's team once again in the WSL, taking over and helping guide them through a tough end of the season and finishing, I believe, 5th place in the league in the end after his time there. So won 6 major trophies on the Manchester City women's side of things. No trophies with NYCFC as head coach, and has worked as an assistant coach around the CFG family as well, which owns a multitude of clubs around the world, but of course does a lot of their work under Pep Guardiola, and the soccer ideas that they have will be his first job, as I mentioned, in NWSL. Denver Summit FC, a team you are closely associated to. So I'm going to ask you this way. Take off your For Denver hat. Let's put on your NWSL analyst hat. From afar, what do you make of this sort of signing and what Denver is doing?
You just mentioned all the accolades for Nick Cushing. And I think first and foremost, Goss, when you look at the 2026 season, preseason starts in January. And the biggest thing is both of these teams, both in Boston, who just announced a couple of weeks ago who their head coach was, and now with Denver, is you got to get a head coach in. Because part of the deal on selling players to play on your team in just 5 months is who they're going to be coached by and what the ideas of not just the GM, but also the head coach are, and how they can utilize those players to implement the system that they want and be successful. So I think it's time. It's about time that we named a head coach, or that Denver named a head coach. And for Denver, yeah, you liked that, huh? A little correction.
You there. Trying to be removed one is not as easy as I thought it would be for
you. It is important that you start signing players. So that's a big step in the right direction. When you talk about the accolades of Nick Cushing, it is a lot of success back in WSL. And now I think this time recently, after finishing his time at New York City just at the beginning of the year, and then having that interim blip with the Manchester City women in finding some success and leading that group, really reinvigorated him to want to be in the women's game. There's a lot of thoughts. You play in the city, you coach in the city group for a long time. You know this is going to be a high-paced, high-pressured, positional play, rotations included, attacking-minded team. If those ideas from the city group translate into NWSL, and like you said, he wants to. Actually, I don't know if you said this now or if it was before, about matching the energy of the fan base and trying to replicate that on the field. And what you kind of see with the city group and the fans here in Denver, it should be a good match.
It is a fascinating, I think, addition for most people from the outside. I think maybe unexpected for a lot of people. And so, we've got comments in here of like, what will this look like? Can this work? How will it sort of be set up? I think it's really interesting. I've been around Nick Cushing a ton, obviously with NYCFC. I've covered Major League Soccer for a while. I know that a lot of the players who played at NYCFC really appreciated the personal connection they had with him. I think a lot of that was his time as an assistant coach. And then there are always those question marks, assistant moving to head coach. It's probably harder at the same club than at a different club because you have this built-in relationship with some players, and then you're trying to shift it and move further away and change things. And so didn't go as well as he would have liked there. And I think one of the question marks for me in all of this is that CFG family has a very clear playing style and has a very specific way that they go about things. They are also very often the best team on the field when it comes to talent. And I think a lot of that style fits that, which is like what Pep Guardiola has built in, which is dictating the game via possession, not always risk-taking via possession, but like controlling the game because at some point with the movements you have built in, the talent will shine over. And that isn't the case for the NYCFC team he took over. And so there were points where you were asking, can the coach sort of create other advantages and find other ways for the team to find different areas where they can take advantage and sort of leap teams that have more talent? And that was never really the case. So that's the question mark for someone like this coming out of the CFG group, going into a different club and now having to build this ethos. But you have the example of arguably the greatest infrastructure in soccer history that you can bring into a brand new club and say, this is the way things are done. Like, this is the expectations. These are the needs, which I think is really huge coming up from a coach and a sporting director into an ownership group that is building a club brand new. And I think from the infrastructure point of view, saying this from the outside, it seems pretty clear that the investment will be there. The issue sometimes with investment is someone needs to know the questions to ask and the things to ask for. Feels like that won't be a problem with someone like Nick Cushing coming into it. And I think part of the formula here, you have NWSL experience in the sporting director, and now you sort of go outside the box on the coach and bring like a new set of ideas and a different angle. It has worked with Jonas Eideval in San Diego, which I think is sort of the big connection. It was a similar idea with Jonathan Heraldez. Now, Heraldez was coming straight out of all the success with Barcelona, but I think all of that is really, really interesting. And I think you look at a situation where you're hoping that you're hitting the sport from multiple angles, and then you go back to the list of names that I just read off. And like, if Kurt Johnson has his connections in NWSL via North Carolina, but just the time around the league, now can you tap into Nick Cushing's? And can I bring a name like a Bunny Shaw back up? Can you bring a name like a Lucy Bronze back up, who's maybe looking for a last experience sort of as her career comes towards its close? I think Akira Walsh is probably outside of the conversation that we should possibly be having, but you're asking, we've talked about all of the great Denver local players who could be a part of this. And like, there is a need for them to come into a setup that is similar to what they're leaving. And I think having someone come from Manchester City, that would be the expectation, is that what you step into, I'm going to throw out a random name and say like a Lindsay Heaps, looks similar to what you're leaving at Lyon, because the expectation he has is building something similar to what was at Man City, which set the tone in England. It is, I think, there's a ton of question marks across the board, but it's a fascinating angle to go or direction to go in.
Yeah. One last thing that I want to mention when you're talking about players and trying to get a certain player to come over, I also feel like what we've seen in NWSL over the last few years is like these little pockets of players who want to play with each other. You think of the Brazilians in Orlando and how you get Marta, and then it's like Marta and friends that come and play together and really create a vibe there. Now we're seeing that in San Diego with the French contingent. They get another French player over the offseason as well. So I think that having the ability to have already, it's a known quantity about some players in Europe, you hope that starts to accumulate. I think the same thing in Boston with the Portuguese players or the players in that realm of the world. You start to get one, and then can you build around that?
Peninsula.
Yeah, there we go. This is also geography.
Which is my favorite, so I wish it was.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. And I think that's your hope is, can you get enough diversity across your diversified backgrounds, diversified connections across your sporting setup to make sure that you can touch on all of these? You always want to have a core, and that's where the questions come in of like what the team will be. I will say that there are reports out there that the first ever player in Denver history is already going to be announced and signed, and it is a Colorado native in Ally Watt, who is currently with Orlando. Reminder, with free agency now, your contract comes up on August 1st. So you finish the season with the team you're on, but you can pre-sign contracts with other teams. And the understanding from all the reports out there, from a number of different sources, is that Ally Watt's going to be that first signing that gets announced. And again, is a Colorado native, which is what we think a lot of this team will lean into. I think it's a fascinating signing. I don't know that she has proven in Orlando that she can be a top 1 or 2 option, but a ton of flexibility. And like, if you're going to start somewhere, you want to start with players who, whatever players you bring in, they can fit alongside, whether it's being a winger, being a center forward, being a second forward, whatever it is. I think Ally Watt can play all across that and has a ton of experience winning in this league, having won the double last year and probably on track to contend for more trophies this year with Orlando. And so that's, again, where you look at things and say, all right, these are probably moves that Kurt Johnson has leaned into and the ones that he's familiar with. Now Nick Cushing's on board. What can you do with his background to start to connect to that next set of players? And as you said, a lot of players will want to understand the coach and the ideas that they're going to be playing inside to sign. So a ton of big news right here as we launched the episode from Denver and from the NWSL teams that aren't even playing, which will continue to be a trend as we like try to keep up with all things NWSL. Boston and Denver just like drop in with like, oh, here's like monumental news. Please continue on with your day otherwise if you'd like to. And that's our first big one there. Let's move into our Ally Sentnor conversation. So this dropped on Friday afternoon as I was in the midst of being dripped in coffee, that Ally Sentnor would be traded to Kansas City Current from the Utah Royals, young U.S. women's national team, full capped player. At this point was the number 1 draft pick for Utah into their expansion season last year, and then spent the year and a half or so with Utah out of the University of North Carolina, has made her debut and broken into the national team under Emma Hayes post the Olympics, and with the absence of triple espresso has become pretty much a staple in the U.S. women's national team, for sure the player pool, but also at times in the starting lineup over the last 6 months or so. And then the announcement coming that she would be traded to the best team in the league, the Shield leaders, by 8 points at this time of the season. So arguably the biggest move we will see in the league, and doing it to the best team in the league. This one kind of broke the brain. I have the details on sort of some of the mechanisms of how this is happening, but Jordan, just overall first reaction when you heard this go down.
What are you doing, Utah? And oh my gosh, Kansas City, you are even more scary than you were 20 minutes ago. You know, like I think that this Kansas City team, we have talked so much about their depth and how many options they have going forward. It really works right now, Goss, because of what's going on in Kansas City. Vanessa DiBernardo just went on maternity leave, so she is now not filling a space in the midfield that she has filled for so long, and it is the timing couldn't have been better to bring in an Ally Sentnor. Dabinia is getting close to being back in. So the threats that this Kansas City team have it just blows your mind. I think one of the things that I am excited to see with Sentnor in Kansas City is she's a young player still and hasn't proven that she can be the focal point and still truly be the game changer. Last year, nobody knew what they were getting. This year, they know what they're getting, and she wasn't a game changer for Utah. She just wasn't. And I'm not saying it's all her fault, but when you're the best player, you are a game changer no matter what. Now you're coming in where Bia takes some of the attention, Michelle Cooper takes some of the attention, Shawinga gets a lot of attention.
Takes a lot of attention.
And now you get to operate in this role where there's so much more freedom and flexibility and gaps that can be taken advantage of. And she will absolutely take advantage of those gaps. And so for Ally Sentnor, and I don't know the ins and outs of what happened behind the scenes, but if you wanted to move, because you remember trades have to be mutual in NWSL now, if you wanted to move, how you couldn't move to a better place. And it already, it seems like she's fit in, seems like Claire Hutton and her are best friends. And to play alongside a player like that, it just gives you a refreshed, re-energized way to go about things. And I just, I don't know how Kansas City does it. How many times have we said that? I don't know how they're doing it.
There's a lot. Yeah, there's so much to process here. By the way, if anyone doesn't know what the mention of the Claire Hutton friendship is, go watch Kansas City's video they posted of Ally Sentnor arriving at the airport. Claire Hutton's there with a sign saying, like, welcome back to my bestie, and then they run and hug each other, and like, not a bad core to have going forward for the next 14 years or whatever you want it to be, whatever those players can be. There's so many levels to this. The first, which you touched on, is the new CBA and the reality, and I think we're going to learn over the next few months, really. I don't think it'll be instant of like how this happened and now how moves like this happen going forward, which is, it seems pretty obvious from the outside that Utah wouldn't just wake up one day and say, we should trade our best player who is young, getting better, and now has broken through on the national team. Very clearly, Ally Sentnor said, like, this isn't working, and I would like to find a different option. Then in finding that option, Ally Sentnor now has power as the player because, like you mentioned, the player has to sign off on every trade. You cannot be traded without you saying, yes, this is okay. Which means as Utah went out to make this deal, it couldn't just be Chicago saying, like, we'll give you $800,000, which the number that we know from Kansas City is $600,000 in intra-league funds. You can't just one-up that because Ally Sentnor can say, I don't want to go there. And so now we're learning this push and pull, and this is what we talked about when the draft got abolished of like, you need to sell yourself as a club at all times. Kansas City has done that internally, and they've done that externally. So maybe Claire Hutton called Ally Sentnor or saw her at national team camp and was like, nothing is cooler than playing at Kansas City. We've got the best facilities. We've got the best coach. We've got the best stadium. And Ally Sentnor left and was like, you know what would be cool? I would like to have the best stadium and the best coach, and I want to play for the best team. And like, there's give and take with all that. There's a salary cap. So players have to find ways to fit themselves into those teams if that's what they choose. But like, this was the option that was always available. And so I think there's the one side fear for people of like, oh no, the league's going to get top heavy. But that means players are choosing to leave something on the table because you can't sign everyone to a max contract. For Ally Sentnor, as you mentioned, like, was the best player on the team in Utah, and the pieces around her were not helping her in the way, I think, to allow her to play at her highest level. And I think you just look at Michelle Cooper and like, that's the model.
Yeah.
Number 2 pick, number 1 pick, coming out of college. Obviously, Michelle Cooper had the position change, which was part of it. But like, look how she has grown every year because the responsibility is not purely on her shoulders, and she could find the game at a higher level as she worked around these players. I think that's the opportunity on the table now for Ally Sentnor.
And with eyes forward, in 2 years, there's going to be a World Cup. And you want to be playing the best football when that time comes. And to do that, you need to be in a competitive environment all the time. So I would imagine for Ally Sentnor, she was thinking about that too. How can I continue to progress my game right now over the next year and a half to make sure when the 2027 World Cup comes along, I am a shoo-in for Emma Hayes, and I will be making that team. On the other side, Goss, like, it feels like Utah's playing checkers when Kansas City's playing chess. Does it kind of feel like that? Like, I don't, and maybe it'll make sense to us at some point, but it's been really hard to watch Utah and what they've been doing because it doesn't seem to make sense. Some of the moves that they have made, the lack of moves is another question. Not bringing anybody in this window, but sending your best player out. Now you have a lot of money, and that's intra-league transfer funds, which to me means you can use it to trade for somebody in the league, how are you going to use it?
Yeah.
Because you need help now. There are moments where it feels like Utah can hang, right? I think a lot of people didn't think that they could hang in this game with Orlando over the weekend, and they find a draw. So there are some solid pieces there, but you're not going to win games if you don't have the ability to score more goals. And so how are they going to utilize the money that they have and prove to everybody else that there's a plan in what they're doing? Because it doesn't, I think to outsiders, you don't see the plan right now.
Yeah, and now, reminder on all of this, players on other teams will have to okay the fact that they would come in with that money, so you can't go out and like come over the top and make moves. The understanding is 300,000 of that intra-league transfer fund money will be coming in directly. 200,000 will come in next year, and 100,000 after that, plus another 100,000 in potential add-ons if Ally Sentnor and the team hit whatever specific bonuses were agreed upon in the trade. And then as the capper, 20% of any future sell on fee of Ally Sentnor, which would most likely be to another league, would then come back to Utah, which none of that to me seems like the right value for a player like this. And I think it shows you probably the spot Utah was in, where she had asked, and they are worried that if it starts to tail on, a potential return goes down because everyone knows she wants out. And like the moment you start this second half of the season and she's not playing, or she makes a comment post game and is like, I'm hoping for a move, then all of a sudden that value tanks because everyone knows that you need to make a move. And this may have been the best one out there, or as we said, there may have been better ones that didn't interest Ally Sentnor as much. We talked about it coming into the season. Casey has re-signed a lot of the key players in this team. They signed Izzy Rodriguez and Michelle Cooper to long-term contracts. They've signed Kayla Sharples to a longer-term contract. They obviously had just signed Claire Hutton. You assume a new deal's probably coming, not too far away because of the way she's performed. Debinha re-signed. So there is space in this. You mentioned Vanessa DiBernardo being unavailable for the rest of this year. I think that's why it makes sense to do it right now. Like there's a clear hole right behind Bia that you could start Sentnor in. And one of the things I've talked about with Sentnor on the national team is like she is not a ball-dominant 10. She can fit in a lot of ways because she is an elite ball striker. She has elite speed. Not maybe the pure stretch the field that Schwinga has, but she can affect the game there. But for sure, coming inside with her quickness, and we have seen her play back to goal. We have seen her play facing goal. We've seen her coming off the wing. She can affect the game from all those spots, and I think that's where for Kansas City it's like a no-brainer. Of not only is this a young player we're going to hope to have around for a while, all of that, but like she can make a difference right now without blowing up everything you've built so far.
Yeah. Those are really good points, and just proves that Kansas City, they're in the driver's seat right now, right? Yeah. I don't think anyone's catching them for that shield. But now, how do they integrate her? I don't think it'll be difficult for them.
Congratulations to DiBernardo family. Vanessa DiBernardo, pregnant, so out for the rest of the year on the season-ending injury list. And then that is a huge spot to fill for this team. And I think for Kansas City, where it felt like last year they were on the road to winning things, they finished the year with no trophies. I think they learned their lesson, and they're like, when it feels like you're in the right direction, put the pedal to the floor and push it even further. And they, as you said, are in the driver's seat to win the Shield for sure. And now I think they are clear favorites to win the championship. But it's the postseason, it's the playoffs, it's single game. We will figure that out when we get there. Monumental deal, though, for Kansas City, and a monumental deal for the league. One name or something to throw out there, if you're talking intra-league funds and saying, okay, who's available inside the league right now, I'm looking at Bay and I'm looking at Gotham. I think they're two teams that are underperforming their expectations, where they might say, okay, yeah, we'll take the out on some of these deals. I mean, the obvious one would be Oshuala or Kundananji. They clearly have not fit together. And so if you are Utah and say, okay, we'll build it all around you, and Bay sort of gets a chance to get out on one of those deals, that's one to think of. Gotham, the other one, which is they've brought Midge Purse back. They've brought Jessa in. Like, there's more talent now in the attack maybe than was originally expected. And can you approach I guess it would be an Ella Stevens and say, like, do you want to be the centerpiece of what we build? But I think those are two teams that I'm looking at where a lot of the other teams don't have the talent on their team to get because they're below, they're low on the table. And the ones in the running, I don't know that you're really looking to make a move right now to take talent off of your roster in that type of way. So those are the two directions I would be looking in if the assumption is you're going to try and use that money inside the league. Let's dig into the weekend, and let's start with Rowdi. You were there in the building for the Washington Spirit's 2-1 win over the Portland Thorns in their return to NWSL. The whole storyline was Trinity Rodman coming off the bench, scoring the goal, the emotion, and all of that. But before that, what did you sort of get from the weekend? First time under Adrian Gonzalez as the permanent head coach, and what the Washington Spirit are hoping to look like and build in the second half of this season.
It was so fun to be there and to get to sit down and talk to Adrian Gonzalez. And he was very adamant about how happy he is to be there. I think he said that in his press conference. And two of the things that I was really impressed with is I had asked him, previously when he was in charge before Jonah came, we saw them really good in a mid-block, right? They were so good and elite in that mid-block where they would then win the ball back and go quickly in transition. And he wants to get back to being a little bit better in that. And I think they were much better in that phase of the game. And then 6, 7 times he said unpredictable. We want to be unpredictable. We don't want to look the same all the time. And, we're given what the lineup's going to look like and the formation it's in, and it is not that formation when they walk out onto the field. And this is what you get when you have a player like Rebecca Bernal, because she can play in the midfield, she can play in the back line. And also Croy Bethune. They had her listed as a winger, but she played in a 10 role. So what I really liked is in this unpredictable look from Washington was it was a 3-5-2. We haven't seen them play with 2 front runners, and it was challenging for Portland to figure out how they manage those 2 up front with also wing backs that were bombing on. And not just that, Goss, it was a structure of 1 holding midfielder in the build and 2 attacking midfielders. So Narumi would push up high next to Croy Bethune and pin back the 2 center midfielders. And I felt like Washington in their build then had so much space for players to get on the ball, whether it was, a center back dribbling a little bit into space to commit a winger, and then they find the Gabby Carl who could then distribute the way she wanted to. I really liked the look from the Spirit. It was aggressive, as it should be, at home in a place that they've usually been really good. They have not been good this year. That's only their 3rd win at Audi Field this season. I thought that it was very interesting, and it was fun to watch the players we expect to dominate the game. And I thought Croy Bethune was excellent in how she positioned herself, how she found the final pass, how she picked off balls and went forward. It was fun to watch what this iteration of Adrian Gonzalez's Spirit team is going to look like, but also it could look very different next weekend.
That's the unpredictability of it all, right?
There you
we'll
go,
just literally never know what's happening. I do think it's really hard to judge, I think, overall what the Jonathan Heraldes era will look like, mainly because of time, but also because of injuries. There was just never a moment where they were the full team. Even the run to the championship last year, right? They're missing major pieces, especially at the center forward position. Trinity Rodman's health has been a factor off and on, and then Croy Bethune's injury. And so that all made it really, really hard. I do feel like, though, we saw once they reached, I think, their peak inside the style, it was sort of what I talked about with CFG, which was like possession in a safe way and possession in controlling games and like organized build-outs that were really, really good. If you press them, they could play through that pressure almost, if not as well as anyone in the league. And then transition moments, when the right personnel was on the field, they were dangerous. There was not a lot of unpredictability, though, inside of their play. And I appreciate hearing, like, okay, that's a focus for us, because as you look at the postseason last year, like, teams could set up and they were shut out every single home game in the playoffs until a miracle set piece or a miracle last second goal. And I think that came a little bit from teams saying, okay, it's the playoffs, so therefore we're just going to do what we have to win, not play to a style. And inside of that, it is predictable enough that we can set ourselves up and we can keep everything outside of our shape, and we can keep everything to deep crosses and crosses from the end line, and we won't let them play between our lines. And Washington didn't really have like a second pitch to get there. And now if that's part of the conversation, I think you're on the road to that. The other part then is Corey Bethune is a second pitch, like alone, which they just didn't have at the end of last year, which as we see is a difference maker. And then Trinity Rodman is the first pitch and the second pitch and whatever else you want it to be. No Ashley Hatch for the rest of the year. We know Cantore can be a factor. Gift Monday available as well. I do think what we've seen from this team is like maybe having quote unquote two forwards at times takes the pressure off anyone being like a true center forward who has so much responsibility, and that could work for this team. But as you
I
said,
will just say with that point real quick, Goss, is Trinity Rodman's not a center forward.
Yeah.
And even though she scores the goal, there were frustrations in me watching her off the ball as to like, play me the ball, or how do I get on the ball? How does she find herself wide? I think it works well with Monday and Cantore because Cantore wants to drop down a little bit, be the playmaker, like almost be a pseudo midfielder in moments. So I think that would work, but this is why it's going to be unpredictable, because it's not going to look like this all the time. When you have a healthy Trinity Rodman, she's going to start on the wing. That's just, that's just how it's going to be, but it's a good problems to have.
Yeah, and that partly then comes with your changing formations based off personnel and how much can you reach your peak inside of all of it. But feels like a pretty good start for this Washington team. For Portland, they're this young, fun team. This was one of those big challenges. Like, can you start on the road at a team that made it to the championship last year? What did you feel like you got from this Portland squad?
Even though they weren't in control of the ball, this is not a ball dominant team, Portland, right? Neither one of these teams have proven this year that they're ball dominant. So I would just throw, I will say that first and foremost. But Portland have shown when they do get the ball that they can go quickly and build. And there were not very many answers in the first half. I will say they grew into the game in the second half. One of the things I like most about them is they're difficult to break down. It was hard for the Spirit to find many good looks. In the first half, they found some good looks. And I think adjustments in the second half, especially through the midfield to try to get pressure a little bit higher up on the field, allowed them to win the ball back and then be in more aggressive spaces. I liked the fight from them. I liked that they kept themselves in the game. And the goal from Olivia Moultrie, this is a player, when I was studying for the game, she had the most key passes in the league. Passes, like she has been in the right spot, but I think she only had a goal and an assist through the first half of the season, which is not the numbers you would think with a player right in and around and at the top of those leading statistics. And when I spoke with her, she said, I'm not focusing on the final product. I know I'm doing the right things and I trust that those are going to pay off. And she was right in the right spot. The way that she took the first touch, gets the goal right on the, right before the whistle blew for halftime. That's the fight that you expect to see from Portland. And this is a team that's really united, and they're going to keep themselves in the push, in and around the top four because of that and because how difficult they have shown to be in breaking them down.
It is watching Friday night. I've said this a couple times. I think to me, like, Olivia Moultrie is a few years ahead, but Kennedy Fuller at times feels more impactful.
Yes.
But the two of them, watching them like figure out how to be the centerpiece of a team in real time is awesome to watch. And when it's on, it's unbelievable. And for Olivia Moultrie, I think that step, which you see her like on the fringe with the national team. And I think the next step is, okay, does it come down? Can you add those stats? Can you score the goals and have the assists and not just like affect the pace of game and have flashes here and there? And it feels like she's ready to take that step and all of that. Let's talk about Trinity. She comes off the bench. She scores a goal. She said she wouldn't miss it. The post-game interview, like, what was it like for you living through that?
It was cool. It was emotional for me, just as a person who's gone through injuries and knows that feeling of what it's like to be away from a team, and you're just desperate for that day you can get back and hoping that everything you've done pays off, because you want to be a contributing factor. You want to be a game changer. That's what we desire as pro footballers. And so to see it all kind of come together, to get to talk to her before the game, the day before as well, and just see how difficult this has been on her. And then she knew it was going to be emotional. Even the thought of going back out on the field at Audi made her emotional. But then to score that goal, that goal that nearly ripped the net off, it just felt like a really redeeming moment for her, and a moment that she will never forget. And I hope, as such a young player, you're 23 years old, your thought of like what my future looks like, it's really, your brain actually can't really comprehend that. But I hope that she has been able to learn about how to be a mature footballer in this time off, and that it seems like she wants to take care of her body. She wants to stick up for herself in moments that she needs to, because it's worth it. Like that shows you it's worth it. And being out on the field, doing what she's so good at, and everybody but probably the Portland Thorns loved that she was out there returning, and it, you couldn't have written it better, Goss.
No, I mean, you can speak to this better than me, but my assumption is you spend the last X weeks / months thinking about that moment, and very rarely does it happen actually. But like you're looking for that thing to motivate you, and that adrenaline rush and whatever as you're running and doing your drills and thinking about returning. And so to see it happen is unbelievable. It is literally, movie stuff, storytelling. The other thing is, there have been some questions about where she wants to be and how connected she is and all of that. And I think you see from the emotion, everything she has said, which has been slightly behind a wall of posts on social media, but not speaking to the camera, and maybe people not being able to see the body language behind it and the connection to all of it. She's pretty connected and she's pretty invested. And it was a pretty big moment for her, and I think for everyone watching. And if this year is going to be the year we think it could be for Washington, coming out of the championship loss last year, she's going to have to be a huge part of it. And so it is blue skies above me, and there's lightning directly in front of me.
What?
I keep looking over. Florida is like a whole vibe. This whole place is ridiculous. In saying that, let's go into the weekend that was, besides this game, not a lot to talk about. 4 of the 8 matches finished in a tie. You saw rotated squads. You saw international players not start games, or you saw them get rest. You saw some newer players not fully available. It was sort of what we expected, aka this like week 1 of the season return. I think you saw a lot of fight and a lot of energy inside of the games, and so the feeling is like it'll be quicker than it would be maybe at the start of the year. But 4 of those 8 being ties. Of course, Washington being one of the big wins. The other 2 big ones, Kansas City goes on the road at Louisville, gets the 2-0 victory. Shawinga gets the opening goal on the road to a potential Golden Boot return and all of that. And this is now adding Ally Sentnor in, but we talked a bit about KC. And then Seattle, 2-0 win Friday night over Angel City, which I think one of the biggest games of the weekend for this Seattle team. Fishel came off the bench late on. Jess Fishlock came off the bench and helped get the victory, scored what ended up going down as the winning goal. But Laura Harvey made an interesting comment going into this game, and I think you saw it play out, which is, she said, this isn't the best roster I've had in Seattle, which makes sense. She's won some good things. She said it was the deepest one she's had, which was surprising to me. But then you watch this game, and you could argue they were toe-to-toe, and then they brought multiple, what you would say are starters, in off the bench. And so I think it's fair to say that the Seattle team has a lot of options.
Yeah.
They've got a lot of depth. The big question mark will be, what is the formula that works best? We've debated for a few weeks now, who are the forwards? Where does Heidema fit in? Where does Lynn fit in? How does it all go together? There's, I think, a lot of work still to do, but it was a good start to get a Western Conference win. And now you go into this weekend, which is Rivalry Week, which means Seattle gets Portland. That game is on Sunday at 4 p.m. Eastern Time. San Diego plays against Angel City. That game is Saturday at 10 p.m. Eastern Time. And then Gotham plays against Washington. That one is noon on Saturday, noon Eastern Time. I don't know why I kept saying the time zone and then left it out there, but noon felt weird with the time zone. But these are 3 fun ones. Jordan, they're all 3 outside of maybe Washington sets of teams where they're trying to find where they sit in the standings and who they are. And it feels like a game with a little extra juice is like the right time to turn things on and sort of put down a stamp saying like, this is who we are for the second half of the season.
All these games I think have a potential of being must watch. San Diego, Angel City, in the first half of the season, two of the best attacking teams when it comes to production on the goal scoring side. I am intrigued to see if San Diego can get back to goals after going 0-0 in their game against North Carolina over the weekend. But they get to host Angel City. I think they played them the first game of season. It was 1-1. And you just think about the players and how they've developed since then. Riley Tiernan has made herself known as a really dangerous center forward in this league. Kenza Dali pulls pretty much every string that you can pull for San Diego. How does Angel City manage Dali? That is going to be not just her, but McCaskill as well. I think that the midfield is going to be important for Angel City in that game. And how do they set up? I'm also a little like Alana Kennedy does a lot of good things in the midfield position. I don't feel like she looked super comfortable as a center back. Which is
so funny because coming into the year, I was like, there's no way she plays in center mid. She will be the center back for this team. And she has kept the team together when there have been injuries in bad games by just dominating the game in central midfield.
Which it gives her a layer too. Like if there is a mistake made or a tackle not won, right, there's players behind her. And typically that's really fast players. And I just think that it hasn't translated into this Angel City team and how aggressive they are playing her as a center back. So will their German international be available? I think they hope so, because I think Kennedy in the midfield does add cohesion and adds a little bit of communication that's going to be necessary against the San Diego team. So a couple of things I'm looking for there. And then Portland, Seattle should be interesting. I don't know, like, I think Seattle, there's still a lot of questions, like who are they going to be going forward? But playing at Portland, this Seattle team, both of these teams have been really hard to break down. Like they're not giving up a lot of goals. Like if I'm thinking of this correctly, they've given up some of the least goals. 13 and 14 goals. That's third and fourth in the league. So they're not giving up a lot of goals. But can that environment in Portland help reinvigorate the Thorns team, who after a difficult loss, this is a game that I think everybody's eyes are going to be on, and Portland could make a statement against Seattle, who continues to find their way up the table. They're in fifth now.
They have stayed sort of in the hunt at the top half inside the playoffs the whole season, even when it's felt like they've been second best in a lot of games. They haven't had their identity, whatever it is, which is the right platform to have to move forward for this team. One thing to note, going through it all, as I said, a lot of players had absences excused, which was part of the injury report, which is expected. Most of them were players you'd expect of coming back from international stuff, whatever it is. The one injury that popped out is Giselle Thompson, who is unavailable right now. And that's one of the ones I would be watching going forward. She's a difference maker for this team, whether it's at wingback, fullback, or winger. I think that's how good she has been. And then Claire Emsley is on the season-ending injury list, also pregnant, so congratulations to the Emsley family. And we saw Jonas Daughter get the start coming straight out of Euros with Iceland, and I think it was just one of those of hasn't played with the team yet, different speed of play. I think Jonas Daughter is a good option there, but Emsley is a creative force for them, not just a finisher and a runner, and so that is a huge loss. And I think if Giselle Thompson had been available, you probably would have seen her in that spot, and it's a slower work in for Jonas Daughter, and I think that's all question marks for this Angel City team. But maybe this is the right matchup, which is San Diego will have more of the ball. And you can get Alyssa Thompson in transition rather than it felt like large stretches of the Seattle game. They had the ball. They struggled to break Seattle down, and then you get panicked a little bit in transition the other way. All of these are going to be really fun.
Yeah, real one comment on that is Pearl Maroney has been maybe the best left back in the league. And she's so aggressive in her positioning, and she's playing on the left side. One of the things I noticed about Angel City that they haven't really done because they've used Emsley is now you have 2 stretching wingers in Jonsdottir and Thompson, and they were switching back and forth. It was like it didn't matter where they were. There was a lot of movement. So are you going to try to put Thompson on Pearl Maroney's side and utilize the space in behind with McNabb as that center back trying to cover the space? I'm just curious how that looks going into this game.
A lot to watch for in this one. We will be back next week with all of our coverage of it. We will be on our socials, so follow us on Blue Sky if you do not. Tell us what you thought about the weekend, biggest moments. We'd love to interact with you. If you don't already, subscribe to our Patreon and get you access to our Discord. We've got our whole NWSL channel in there where we're chatting about the games all the time, as well as like a live interaction channel as we watch the games. One thing to close out on, though, every single week, going up over the next 50 plus weeks, we will be doing a new state in our 50 states of soccer. We will announce them at the beginning of the week, as we did so on Soccer Wise with Tom on Monday. We have a range of topics that we'll be digging into across both Kickback and Soccer Wise. So the Kickback committee has their sort of scouting report of every state. Best soccer bar, hallowed grounds, best youth club. We had Peter Wilt on, who is like the dean and czar of Wisconsin soccer on Tuesday. He got us a lot of information. So if you want to, you can go listen to that show. We had Patrick Inferno on as well, one of the co-owners of Vermont Green, to help celebrate their victory and talk about how you build a club in your community. So if you have any interest, and Jordan wouldn't know anything about this, but if you have any interest in building something you want to see in your own community, these people have some advice that you could go listen to. But here at SoccerWise, every week, we will be putting together our 5-a-side of like the 5 best players in the state. I call it 5-a-side because there will be some debate of like positional needs and flexibility if you get down into the like minutia. But I think overall, most states, it'll be like, yeah, these are no-brainers. I'm not super familiar with Wisconsin, which is why I love doing this, because I'm learning a ton. I proudly have been to many states in the United States, and Wisconsin is not one of them. So it is on my list. Yeah.
Not
it's
a cheesehead.
6 or 7. No cheese. I've never drank beer before. Like, I've never experienced any of these things that are super popular in Wisconsin. In getting into the players, though, so we did our first run through. We've gotten some responses. Jay Demerit played in the World Cup, played with the U.S., played in the Premier League. That's been a big one. We've gotten Jesse Marsh, who had a great playing career and now is a head coach. One we gotten as well. One of the things I will say, and we are looking for feedback, so please send us messages on Blue Sky, respond to our poll on Instagram, and let me know. We've gotten a lot of names of players who are associated to Wisconsin, but I'm not sure that they are players from Wisconsin. And it seems like there is a lot of bleed between Michigan and Wisconsin, and then a decent chunk between Illinois. So some of the names we've received, I don't know that they would count. We've gotten a huge clamor about Rose Lavelle, who went to college at Wisco, is from Cincinnati, Ohio. Does not count. I have reached out to Gotham. I'm looking for confirmation on this. Breaking news, but I don't think Roosevelt is going to claim it. The rule we're kind of going with is you're from there, but also like you only get one. So if you tell us, oh yeah, I'm from there, but like I bleed this, then that's your state. That's great. You get to make that decision. We are not national security over here. We're not making decisions for you, but you only get one is the case. Kate Margraf, one that has come up. Born and raised in Michigan, went to college at Notre Dame, seems to live in Wisconsin now. I do not think that that's one that would count. On the flip side, Lindsay Tarpley, born in Wisconsin but raised in Michigan. Michigan Gatorade High School Player of the Year. Ooh. So I think that's one we also can count. No-brainer, Leslie Osborne.
Yeah.
Whatever state Leslie Osborne's from, she's going to be in the best 5 players, but she is firmly from
Unless
Milwaukee.
It's California. Unless she's choosing California, then I would choose Wisconsin, so I make the list.
And Leslie Osborne is clearly from Wisconsin, grew up in the Milwaukee area.
She still has a little tinge of that accent. It depends on the word she says. So
there you go.
I think she's good.
Grew up in Brookfield, Wisconsin, attended Catholic Memorial High School in Waukesha, Wisconsin. There's a lot of names in Wisco that I don't know how to say. I'm going to work on those. I'm stoked about that, actually. Casey Lloyd, another one. UNC great. Casey Noguera, for those who don't follow the second name, ended up marrying Zach Lloyd, who is an FC Dallas player and was also a UNC player. I think that's where they met. Those are two that feel like obvious add-ins. I think Leslie Osborne, no-brainer on the top 5. Right?
Yeah, and I'll push Casey Lloyd because what she did at North Carolina, then with she played at Kansas City. I'm pretty sure she won the second year that they won the championship at FCKC. Played in WPS, was on the national team. Now continues to play. I mean, she is a TST standout. Yeah. Every year, this women's team she wins because of her. So her legacy continues, and she's still in the game. She owns a club that helps spread the gospel through soccer, and has her own club. So for me, she's continuing to be in the space of soccer. I think that I got to put her in there. I got to give her some shout outs there.
So here are some other names though for you from Wisco. Kate Del Fava.
Okay.
One of your favorites.
I do love her.
Obviously,
not there yet, though.
In the prime of her career, from Kenosha, Wisconsin.
Nice.
Which you can't be more Wisconsin than that. And obviously playing mainly with Utah in her professional career. Sarah Hagan, a Wisconsin native. Appleton North High School.
Yep.
And then went to the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee, which is why I think, by the way, there is a lot of confusion here, which is there are a lot of great college soccer programs in Wisconsin. Marquette's a great program. A lot of the UW programs, Green Bay, Wisconsin, Milwaukee, all of these schools. I think that's why a lot of people keep saying names to us that I don't know qualify. But that is one that would qualify for you if you wanted. Ended up with U.S. national team caps, played in Europe, played for Orlando, Kansas City, and the Houston Dash in NWSL. And then I would say that those go along with the ones that we've already said in Leslie Osborne and Casey Lloyd. Elise Bennett is from Milwaukee as well, just left NWSL for Spain. Probably a little bit young to push into a conversation like this, but feels like we have some options in here.
Casey's dad could probably be in there too. Casey Noguera's dad. He was all-time indoor soccer player or something. Victor
Noguera was a goalkeeper on the U.S. futsal team, which took second place at the 1992 FIFA Futsal World Championship.
You always need a goalkeeper. Are goalkeepers part of the five-a-side? Do you have to have a goalkeeper?
I wish you hadn't just said that because I've quietly just been ignoring it for a really long time.
I don't think you have to. That's just too hard.
Because you can't have one from every state.
No, and there's 11 spots on the field and one goalkeeper. The ratio doesn't ratio.
Yeah, but I think it's fair to say, if we get into that minutia debate, that maybe a goalkeeper wins out over another field player because...
Absolutely, yeah.
It's an excuse. So I think Osborne 100%, we're pushing Lloyd into this conversation as well. And then Kate Del Fava would be the next one in if we get there.
Sure, but I don't think so.
Okay. All right.
How many do you have? How many men do you have?
We've got Jay Demerit. We've got Jesse Marsh. We have, I think, Esmir Barterovich, Matt Polster.
Yeah, I mean, even Matt Polster has a longer career than Kate Del Fava. I would choose him over her.
Interesting. Yeah. I think they're in similar territory, but I think that's probably our debate point. We're probably stuck on the 4th and 5th spot, but mainly that 5th spot.
Yeah.
So that
I love Kate. I'm not saying I don't love Kate.
I know. I know you do, as we have heard on many broadcasts over the last year and a half. In saying that is what you will be tuning in for all on Thursday, which is tomorrow at 5:30 p.m. Eastern Time. We're going to do our first ever kickback happy hour across our Soccer Wise and Kickback family. We're going to be doing these live stream happy hours on most Thursdays around 5:30 p.m. Eastern Time with guests, our hosts, just hanging out, chatting. But one of the things we're going to do in that is we're going to put a bow on. Are you hearing all my?
Is everything okay there?
It's just Miami. It doesn't even matter. I will bet you money that there's a car on fire 5 blocks away that they're not going to, and they're going somewhere else for some other silly reason. You have no idea what's going on in my building. I found out that everyone in my building puts their Instagram in stickers on their car, and I started looking up the accounts, and they are absurd. So if you're shredded and you want to make $2,000 to $5,000 a day, all you need to do is find 10 people who will pay you $90 a day, and I can make you money. Turns out that's an easy thing to do. In saying all of that, our happy hour is coming up. So that one's going to be on Thursday. We've got some Wisconsin soccer royalty that we are talking to about joining us for that to help us sort of weigh in on some of this. And myself and Susanna will be on. Heath Pierce will be with us. And maybe some of our other friends will stop by for a couple minutes as well. If not, we will see you all next week. We've got a lot more soccer to talk about, a lot of games coming up, and a lot that we are doing across all of our Kickback channels. So make sure to follow us on Blue Sky, follow us on Instagram, like and subscribe us on YouTube, and please rate and review us wherever you listen to your podcast, because that's how people find us. And we are trying to talk about all of this to as many people as possible, to grow the leagues, to grow fandom, and just to hang out with as many people as we can. So we will talk to you all again very